episode of the Mid Post. I told you last episode that you would hear from me the moment we get some major news like trades or free agency signings. And well, Jesus himself clearly said, say less, and proceeded to shake up the NBA with news of surprisingly quick, almost seamless trades involving all-stars like Giannis Antetokounmpo and LaMelo Ball. And now these rumors of other future Hall of Famers like LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Anthony Davis switching teams. So today I'm sharing all my thoughts on everything that's happened the past couple of days and the week or so, whether that's trades. I got some NBA draft talk today, just other topics as I finally have a traditional mid-post episode for you today, which means, yes, a full-length fadeaway segment is back. Although I will say I fully intended on bringing back mid-post player of the week today, but there is just so much I want to talk about today that I decided to scrap it this week and preserve my voice for today. But regardless, I definitely got a jam-packed show for you today, and we'll tip off today's time together with a brief breakdown of one of the first deals that actually went down ahead of the NBA draft before actually detailing some of the NBA draft selections that caught my eye within the last week or so. So for our face up, I want to start with that Julius Randle and Nick Claxton trade. All right. Before last week's draft, a 3-team deal was announced between the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Brooklyn Nets, and my Chicago Bulls. The Nets received Julius Randle and the 28th pick from Minnesota. The Wolves received the 33rd pick from the Nets and Mo Gay from the Bulls, not to be confused with Mo Gay from the Atlanta Hawks. Yes, same name, different players. And then the Bulls received Nick Claxton from the Nets. A very interesting trade. And in general, I like it for the Bulls the most, and that's me being unbiased. And I'm still processing what the Nets are trying to build, but I really do like this for the Bulls. And even for the Nets, I'm not mad at them getting a player of Julius Randle's caliber. But I want to start with the Bulls side of things, of course. Now, obviously, this is a really good pickup for the Chicago Bulls, getting somebody like Nick Claxton. The Chicago Bulls have been trying to embrace an up-tempo roster going back as far as the 2021-22 season, getting guys like Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Derrick Jones Jr., and Javonte Green alongside somebody who really thrives in up-tempo play in Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic were used as the stabilizing half-court options, right? So that's part of the reason why, even though we just got a little bit of a sample size, the Bulls were so successful that season because they really had a nice hybrid of both of those playing styles. Now, for the past couple of seasons, it has transitioned into building around Josh Giddey, who is more of that prototypical floor general you want in today's game. 6'8", can rebound well, loves to play fast, can shoot the three, has infectious playmaking ability. And now when you look at the fact that they've drafted Montes Buzelis a few seasons ago, another 6'9", lanky, athletic player that thrives in the open court, and now you bring in Caleb Wilson, who can run the floor well, Dalen Swain, right? These new rookies that they drafted who are going to be able to attack the basket in fast break situations. And so once the Bulls traded Nikola Vucevic this past season, it became clear that the Bulls were all in on run and gun hoops. And now, looking at what new executive Bryson Graham has talked about in interviews and whatnot, he is absolutely trying to maximize that style of play and prioritize size on the wings and athleticism, similar to what he did with his former team in the Atlanta Hawks. And we see how that panned out, right? Now, I say all this to say, the Bulls had a gap at their center spot. If you watch the Bulls at all last season, past the trade deadline, they all had backup caliber centers. Jalen Smith, while able to run the floor and protect the rim and stretch the floor, he's a tweener. He sometimes he plays the 4 in traditional lineups. Other times he's best used as a backup center, right? You look at Nick Richards. He was single-handedly brought in because the Bulls did not have any size. So it was an opportunity to increase the size for the Bulls, just a very raw talent. And then you have Gershon Yabusele, who is really good as a small ball center, much like his time with the Sixers. And then you even look at Zach Collins, right? Somebody who we didn't even get to see a lot of time of because of injuries, right? He continues to struggle with injuries, unfortunately, so we don't always see him out there. And so knowing this identity, this open court identity of the Chicago Bulls, they didn't need a post presence. They didn't need someone who needs the ball to get going, like Nikola Vucevic. They just needed someone to take pride in the basic fundamentals of being a big man in the NBA. Be the last line of defense, be a lob threat, set good screens, run in transition. And that's why the Nick Claxton pickup is so good, because it's a low pressure scenario and the Bulls didn't even lose anything by acquiring him. Now, when you look at his time in Brooklyn, he started out on playoff caliber teams and gradually evolved into one of the better shot blockers and lob threats in the league, which again, it gets very easy to do the simple things when you're playing with great players, right? When you're playing with Kevin Durant, when you're playing with Kyrie Irving, when you're playing with James Harden, when you're surrounded by shooters and good role players and glue guys, like it's easy to play your best in an environment like that. Over time, though, the Nets' direction, it changed the minute he seemed to be putting together his best seasons, right? The minute he had his most efficient season, shooting 70% from the field, I think his play took a little bit of a hit, because just when it seemed like the Nets were a contender and he was playing with those great players that I just named, they chose to rebuild again. Some of those guys demanded trades, and it just fell apart. Now, that said, if you look at the collective of Nick Claxton's career, he still hasn't shot under 56% since he's been in the league. He's still capable of protecting the basket, even if it hasn't necessarily shown in his block average as much. And he really expanded his game to be a modern big. Today's bigs aren't crazy rebounders. They aren't crazy physical presences inside, but they make up for it by bringing the ball up on occasion, right? Not being scared to put the ball on the floor, finding passing angles from the top of the key, guarding the perimeter, and then turning defensive stops into offensive opportunities. These are all qualities that you can see in Nick Claxton's game. And the Chicago Bulls did not acquire him to stand out. They acquired him to be a perfect fit for what they're trying to establish as an up and down, young, selfless basketball team. And that's why I envision this being a good fit, and hopefully more of a long-term fit than people expect if all goes well. Even if that means finding a better option and then becoming a backup, I think very similar to the career trajectory of what we've seen from a guy like Mitchell Robinson. So I would love that for Nick Claxton. And overall, I just love this move for the Bulls, because we know that, I've said this before on my former show, we know that the best moves sometimes aren't the ones that are the loudest, but the ones that solve a clear gap in the rotation. Any player that just needs an opportunity to do what they do best. And to me, that's what this acquisition of Nick Claxton does for the Chicago Bulls. Now, flipping to the Nets side of things, this is really the interesting part of this, right? Because I'm happy that the Nets were able to acquire somebody with the 3-level scoring ability and veteran leadership that Julius Randle presents. Now, mind you, the Brooklyn Nets were the youngest team in the league this past season. Almost 40% of their roster was made up of rookies. And if you needed an example further of how young these dudes are, I always think back to when their social media admin made a video asking them who their favorite content creators / streamers were. You're not going to hear that in a lot of the other locker rooms in the NBA, but the Brooklyn Nets are so young that that's even a question for some off-court content. That just a small detail, but something that always pops back into my head when I think about how young they are. And the thing is, the oldest players on that team were Terrence Mann, Michael Porter Jr., and Nick Claxton, all from the same draft class, right? Or at least all played 6 seasons in the NBA. Quite honestly, that's not a bad mix if you really think about it. Terrence Mann has one of the most X-factor performances in NBA playoff history with that 39-point game that sent the Clippers to their first ever conference finals in 2021. He's been in the locker room with other guys like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. I mentioned earlier, Nick Claxton, he has that playoff experience. He played with guys like Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, also James Harden. Michael Porter Jr. is an NBA champion. He's played on some great Nuggets teams and won that championship in 2023. Collectively, those 3 gentlemen make up the experience of a 10, 15-year NBA veteran. At the same time, Terrence Mann is still trying to find a consistent, improved role in the NBA himself. Michael Porter Jr. is getting his first taste as a go-to guy in the league while possessing a pretty unpredictable personality. I'll just say that. So that's where Julius Randle comes in, right? A 12-year veteran, experience around various NBA generations of players from Kobe Bryant all the way to Anthony Edwards. He's been a role player. He's been a go-to guy. He's been through injury. He's been an all-star. He's missed the playoffs entirely. He's made it to the conference finals. He's played for big markets. He's played for smaller markets. He's been at the point where he's pretty much seen everything but a championship. So he's a great addition to a locker room that desperately needed at least one seasoned veteran, just one, for crying out loud. And as far as the on-court production, the Nets, if you notice, they used a lot of bigger lineups in the past season, often starting Yegor Joman, Terrence Mann, MPJ, Noah Clowney, and Nick Claxton. Shortest dude on there is Terrence Mann, and Terrence Mann is like 6'5". And it just seems like they're continuing this trend after acquiring somebody like Julius Randle and then drafting Mikael Brown in the draft, who's 6'5". So it'll be interesting to see who wins that center spot between Day'Ron Sharpe, or you could say Danny Wolf, or even Noah Clowney, although I do like him better at the 4 than the 5. But case in point, the bigger Nets lineup seem to be locked in for next year as well. And Julius Randle is going to have a really good opportunity to be a mentor to these guys, to be a leader to these guys, but also still have enough in the tank to do what he does as well. So a very interesting mix, though. Very interesting mix because, again, I'm with everybody else. You probably thought it as well. That dynamic between him and MPJ is a little, you don't really know how it's going to work. You know, who do you give it to at the end of the game? Because both of those guys are going to want the ball. So there are going to be some things that they'll have to figure out with logistics-wise and game scenario-wise. But overall, I do think it's a solid pickup for the Nets and a solid situation for Julius Randle. Like I said, it is interesting, but because they're still ways away from improving in the way that they want to improve. And it's likely a pit stop for Randle, who has a player option for 2027-28. So he likely is going to be here for 1 year unless he really likes it here and maybe they make some moves or whatever. You never know with the NBA. But that said, this is looking like a team that will showcase just very small moments of surprise this next season, as they have a couple of all-star caliber players to play through and a lot of young talent with a lot of room to grow if all things go well. Now, from that trade, I want to transition to some NBA draft, a little bit of rapid fire. You know, with me, it's never truly rapid fire because my brain is already thinking of on-court scenarios and other court-side perspective type situations. But I do want to do some rapid fire NBA draft talk and just share some quick thoughts and analysis on some of the picks that stood out to me. And obviously, I referenced it earlier. I got to start with my Bulls getting Caleb Wilson and Dalen Swain. All right. I talked about them briefly earlier, but it is certainly exciting to see the Chicago Bulls get one of the top prospects in the draft and another wing in Dalen Swain that should have some instant impact as well. I'm still cautiously optimistic. I got to be honest. I'm a little cautiously optimistic, probably because it's my team, but I'm just cautious in seeing if Caleb Wilson leans more towards face-up attacks, or does he lean more towards back to the basket, or does he actually balance both of them? The film tells me he'll balance both of them, and trust me when I tell you, I see those Kevin Garnett comparisons that people are making. You know, because the thing that gets me, you just got to be patient with bigs, especially in today's era. I don't know what it is. It just, you got to wait a little bit, because at the end of the day, we don't know if he's going to be more like an Evan Mobley, or is he going to be more like a Giannis or a Kevin Garnett. Either way, I fully expect him to create his own lane and hope he has a fantastic NBA career. He's got all the tools. He could run the floor. He's great in the half court. He's got some of that old school game that I personally love to see from players. You know, he's not a one-dimensional guy by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm really excited for what the Bulls have and what they might do with him. And he sounds like a hungry guy and a competitive guy. And I just love what I've been hearing from him in interviews. Just fearless dude, sounds like a great guy to build a team around. And as for Dalen Swain, I like his game. I don't envision him getting as many on-ball opportunities that he did in college, because when you're playing with a point guard like Josh Giddey, that requires you to be able to make quick decisions when attacking and make quick decisions off the catch. And I trust in Swain's ability to put the ball on the floor. He's really good at that and thrive in attacking and driving situations. Uh, and even those moments in transition that I mentioned too. So it should be really nice to see these pieces with a new coach and Tiago Splitter and a budding identity that just seems to be growing by the day. So those are some really good pickups for what the Bulls are trying to establish moving forward. Now, next up, I want to talk about OKC getting Ade Mara and Bennett Sturts, two guys in college that have, their names were pretty well known, I thought. And you got to forgive me because I didn't watch a ton of college this year. I'm just kind of picking up on what other people are saying and what all the draft gurus are talking about and watching film on my own. But obviously, it's just absolutely insane that Ade Mara fell to the OKC Thunder. And it's also interesting to note in back-to-back drafts, the OKC Thunder drafted big men to beef up their depth. Even as they won the finals in 2025, they drafted Thomas Sorber because there were moments where they opted for small ball lineups versus teams like the Nuggets and the Pacers in the finals. Now, this year, it's the same thing. Sorber missed the season due to injury, and now there were moments in the playoffs where both Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren had underwhelming moments versus Wemby and the Spurs and other lineups. So now, once again, OKC's looking at that and they're saying, we got to get a big. We got to get a big just in case our starters underperform. And even when I look at the acquisition of Bennett Sturts, I'm sitting here thinking he might be more of a ball handler to play alongside SGA. I'm thinking, oh, yes, they're finally using their brains and they're getting a guard so SGA can play a little bit more off ball. But the more I watched his highlights, the more he reminds me of AJ Mitchell. And while I'm not mad at the pick at all, the Oklahoma City Thunder just still seem to be willing to live off the heliocentrism of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in half-court settings unless they plan on giving Nikola Topic a legit chance next season. The past two playoff rounds, the past two playoff runs now, the Thunder have exposed the fact that they would be wise to add a true point guard next to SGA because there were various moments, whether it be the 2025 semifinals versus Denver or the NBA Finals versus Indiana, or you can look at this year's Western Conference Finals versus San Antonio Spurs. I know they were wishing at various points that they still had Josh Giddey, that Josh Giddey didn't want to. Josh Giddey saw where the Oklahoma City Thunder were going, and he said, I want my own team. I see where this is headed. But I know OKC is missing him. Someone to handle the rock, someone to make decisions, someone to push the pace even after made buckets since they struggled to turn defense to offense without J-Dub in the lineup versus the Spurs. So we're going to see how all this goes for OKC because Sam Presti has been able to establish this team as like a team of Uno draw four cards. Like the offense revolves around SGA and sometimes J-Dub, but everybody else is a draw four. All right, we got AJ Mitchell, draw four. Chet Holmgren, draw four. Oh, you think we're done? Jared McCain, Lou Dort moonshots, Cason Wallace, Jay Will, Ade Mara, Bennett Sturts. Like OKC's superpower is that they can and will play anybody. And bringing in Ade Mara and bringing in Bennett Sturts only strengthens that. So again, if you follow me on Twitter, you know I said this as well, especially for Ade Mara, like the more bodies they can throw at Wemby and other bigs in the league, the better off. You never want to, a lot of these teams that are losing don't have a lot of big man depth. And we're seeing that become more important in today's NBA. So the Oklahoma City Thunder are definitely establishing that. And also with Bennett Sturts, getting more quality guards around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now I want to move to the Golden State Warriors and talk about Yaxel Lindenberg. Just briefly, he was seen as one of the highest potential plug-and-play guys in this draft. And he went to a team that takes pride in that selfless style of basketball. There was probably no greater fit for him than the Golden State Warriors. With no Jimmy Butler as well, he has an opportunity to not just emerge as a bright spot for the future, but even help the Warriors as they try to make the most of Stephen Curry's final years. So I loved that pick. Moving on to Toronto, getting Allen Graves specifically. Again, I didn't watch much college. I didn't know who this man was, but there are better analysts with better breakdowns. But from what I've gathered, the Raptors drafted a young man who fits their defensive identity while filling their need for three-point shooting perfectly. He came off the bench in his lone season at Santa Clara, shooting 41% from deep with 2 steals and 1 block. Like the Raptors, they're going to want him to do exactly what he did in college. Come off the bench and be effective on both ends. Be reliable on both ends. And they really needed a player like that, so I really like this pick. Moving on to the Sixers. You know I'm happy about the Sixers. The Sixers drafted LeBaron Philon. And you know how I felt about that Sixers bench. After being labeled as one of the better guards in the draft with lottery hopes, LeBaron Philon fell to 22nd, which I think might have been due to his slimmer stature. He's 6'4", but 176 pounds. So he does, even though he's a little bit taller, he does kind of remind me of that like Rob Dillingham kind of build. So I think a lot of teams were scared of that. But thankfully, that's exactly where he needed to go. He needed to go to the Sixers because they desperately needed a lead guard to help with bench production and give Tyrese Maxey some breaks so he's not playing 43 minutes a night, right? 22 points, 5 assists, 40% from 3 in his sophomore season at Alabama. LeBaron Philon is a shifty guard who displays good change of pace and scoring ability, right? He looks patient enough to run an offense, but also aggressive enough to look for his shot when his team needs it the most. And that's what the Sixers need. They needed that, especially coming off the bench. So I love this for the Sixers. I'm just a little, I'm a little wary because he's got to adjust to the NBA game, adjust to the physicality and whatnot. But this is a really good and much needed pick for the Sixers. And then you look at the Lakers getting Cameron Carr. The Lakers really just sat here and got Luka Doncic, a 6'5" dude with a 7'1" wingspan, which basically makes him look like he's 6'8" on the court, a dude that can jump out the gym, and he isn't shy to attack the basket or shoot off the catch. Again, that's the kind of player that you want around Luka Doncic. Somebody not scared to shoot, somebody not scared to play defense. He's a pogo stick on defense as well. And like I said, from what I've noticed, he isn't afraid to protect the rim and challenge passing lanes defensively. So he has some value on both sides. Obviously, again, the NBA is a different game, but at the very least, he can thrive as a transition threat and a spot-up shooter, the exact kind of player you want alongside Luka Doncic. So I love that the Lakers were able to get him after he kind of fell in the draft as well. And then lastly, probably my most favorite acquisitions, I guess, outside of what the Bulls did, the San Antonio Spurs getting Jaden Quaintance and Terrence Reid Jr. And I said it once the finals ended. The Spurs needed size around Wemby. A true power forward that can play alongside him, preferably one that can not just play with Wemby, though, but take his place when he's subbed out as well. And the Spurs didn't acquire just one of those dudes. They got 2 of those kind of dudes with these picks. Jaden Quaintance was seen as a risky pick because he's had some injury troubles, only playing 4 games for Kentucky this past season. But when you look at the tape, my goodness. Tremendous defensive energy. He doesn't just block shots. He makes statements. He sets good screens. He's an athletic lob threat. He's the exact physical, dirty work big you want to see next to Wemby. Because Wemby's not that guy, at least yet. But these dudes are going to bring that balance. And in fact, I'd go as far as calling Jaden Quaintance Robert Williams 2.0. That's exactly who I saw the minute I watched the tape. Raw prospect, injury troubles early on, if you remember Robert Williams' story. I think there was some off-court stuff he was dealing with as well. But with patience and good management of his minutes, he became a real impact player for a championship caliber team, and that's exactly what Jaden Quaintance has the opportunity to do right now. And similarly, the Spurs actually stole Terrence Reid from the Nuggets after a draft day trade and basically said, well, okay, if Quaintance doesn't work out, thank you, Denver. We got this guy now. Someone with a good motor, someone who's not afraid of physicality, somebody who owns his role as the center on a basketball team. And my favorite part, Terrence Reid is a 4-year college player. And usually those players come into the NBA a lot more prepared mentally and physically, usually providing that instant impact in even small yet reliable ways. So, and let me not forget, this is the same brother that dropped 32 points and 27 rebounds in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. The Spurs seem to be fully prepared to supplement their strong guard play with really good front court depth now, as these were 2 of my favorite pickups of the entire NBA draft. So the offseason always brings some interesting trades and a new class of rooks ready to make their impact in the professional ranks. These were just my thoughts on just one of those deals and a few of the youngins that got drafted and are preparing to take their talents to the next level. But what did you think of the Julius Randle trade? Nick Claxton going to the Bulls? And what are some of the rookies that you're looking out for this upcoming season? Talk to me. Join the conversation by tweeting the show at midpostpod or at DesmondPod_. You can tweet me directly, or you can sound off in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Setting up our offensive attack now, it was only right to save the two biggest trades of the young offseason for our jab step. Giannis Antetokounmpo has finally been traded to one of his playoff rivals in the Miami Heat, while LaMelo Ball was unexpectedly traded from the rising Charlotte Hornets to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's actually the trade I want to start with because, man, do I have thoughts. Now, on the Hornets side of things, what the heck are the Charlotte Hornets doing? After barely missing out on the playoffs, losing in the second play-in game versus Orlando, and being one of the best teams in the league after the halfway point, it was like January or whatever, the Hornets looked like they finally had a squad that meshed together. You had diverse scoring options in Brandon Miller, who shoots a lot of threes but can attack the basket. LaMelo Ball, who can get streaky from three. Miles Bridges, who scores a lot in the interior, but he's an athletic lob threat and isn't shy to take and make threes. Knipple, who emerged already as one of the best shooters in the NBA. Kobe White, who's incredibly crafty off the dribble, giving them a crazy good six man. Then you have that hustle and interior defense coming from guys like Musa Diabate and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Then you got solid role players like Sion James and Grant Williams coming back from injury. It just seemed like the Hornets they were going to finally take a leap once LaMelo Ball got healthy and put together that kind of season for himself. And they bridged the talent that they had with cerebral basketball. I said it on my former show ahead of the season. The Hornets were likely going to take a leap because they recognized that we don't always need the talented guys. Let's just get the cerebral guys, a Knipple, right? Somebody like Musa Diabate, let's let him grow and emerge as somebody who takes pride in the dirty work. Like, it doesn't just have to be electrifying basketball all the time. We need guys that take pride in just the little things. And they finally did that, really previewing what at least was thought to be a very bright future for this team. And yet all of a sudden, they trade the point guard they literally built their team around for Reid, a good addition to their depth, but still leaving them without the most important piece to their brand of basketball, a natural-born playmaker. Now, this is not a diss to Kobe White, who is more than capable of being the starting point guard for that team, but he is more of a scorer than a playmaker. And with Knipple being a shooter, Brandon Miller being a natural scorer, Miles Bridges thriving off those points in the paint and those alley-oops, but even now he's been traded to Phoenix for Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. More on that later. And now you got Reid entering the mix as this stretch big who can put the ball on the floor, almost like a wing. So, like, who is going to make sure all this works? I like the depth. I see what they're doing a little bit. I like the floor spacing. But without an orchestrator, what are we doing? This is still the game of basketball. We are going to need somebody to set all these guys up. That's why it worked before. I just don't understand why the Hornets decided to make this kind of move right now, especially not getting a similar-minded point guard in return. That's all I'm saying. I've been able to sit with this trade the last day or two, and I realized the business side of trading a couple players while they still have value in hopes of getting better fits down the line as guys like Knipple and Brandon Miller reach their peaks. Cool. I can understand that. But I wouldn't have minded the trade if it was the rumored Josh Giddey and LaMelo swap, as the Hornets would have still gotten a tall floor general, and the Bulls would have had a more offensively talented floor general, two players that would serve as near perfect replacements for one another. But because that didn't happen, it really makes me question what the Hornets are up to, because this is a team that I probably would have penciled in for the playoffs this upcoming season. But now it looks as if they are taking what is hopefully a temporary step back to take 10 steps forward. Delayed gratification. Clearly, the Hornets are seeing something that I cannot see, but That said, at first glance, I fear that from a courtside perspective, this is one of the most confusing trades in recent memory. That team, at the end of the day, was crafted for LaMelo Ball's style of play. And unless they have their eyes on the other handful of guards, some of whom are untouchable, that provide a similar playmaking effect, I'm not sure exactly what it is that they're trying to do. Clearly, they have their vision on something in like 2030 or something. Because I just did not understand this as much. You know, I don't like when teams are about to take a leap and then they think the grass is greener and then they just make a move that changes everything they just built. So I don't know how I feel about that. And then even on the Timberwolves side, quite honestly, I don't feel that great about what they are doing with this trade either. Now, sure, we knew that if the Timberwolves were going to take a big swing on somebody, they were likely going to have to sacrifice one or even two of their important players like Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, or Rudy Gobert. I said that episodes ago, that the Timberwolves are going to be one of those teams that make a gambit move because they're so close yet still not aligned with an OKC or San Antonio. But I would have much rather, if they were going to make a gambit move, I would have much rather them attempt the 3-team trade that I detailed episodes back, where the Wolves essentially sacrificed Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert to bring in Drew Holiday, Giannis, and Miles Turner alongside Ant-Man. That way, they would get that superstar alongside of Ant and Giannis. They would maintain a defensive-minded front court with Giannis and Miles Turner while switching to somebody like Miles Turner who can bring a little extra offensively compared to Rudy Gobert. And then you gain a serviceable point guard on both ends of the floor. That checks all the boxes. But with this trade for LaMelo Ball, they do get a true point guard on their roster, which we know they needed. And thankfully, with future health in mind, that flexibility between Ayo Dosunmu and Dante DiVincenzo allows them to not just sub in for LaMelo Ball, but play alongside him. That versatility is all there. But the thing is, with no Julius Randle and no Naz Reid, Anthony Edwards is probably going to have to play a lot of minutes at the 3, and Jaden McDaniels is going to have to play a lot of minutes at the 4. And in this era, it's doable. Teams are doing it, but it is something that I'll have my eyes on because the last few seasons now, they've had legit 4s and 5s. So everybody has to get bumped up a little bit. And even then, Rudy Gobert is pretty much all they got in the front court. A lot of front court minutes have opened up. Especially, I'm looking at a guy like Johan Behringer, who I know they really like over there and hope develops into a key piece with, again, likely a bigger role next season. Because outside of Rudy, the Wolves still don't have a strong front court rotation anymore, and that's what scares me about this trade. Now, I will say, the one thing that I do like about the Timberwolves making this trade is that they seem to be putting more eggs into their offensive basket this year. LaMelo Ball has always been a tempo pusher, bringing that West Coast Magic Johnson style hoops. Push the pace, put on a show, make teammates better simply because you trust and believe in them and want to see them do well. And the Timberwolves know that when they run into an OKC Thunder, when they run into a San Antonio Spurs, they have a harder time scoring in the half court, even with a superstar like Anthony Edwards on their team. And there were many moments where even when they tried to push the pace after made baskets, their offense still looked disjointed. It looked like they never wanted to know what they wanted to do when they got up the court. So it looks like this move for LaMelo Ball is to combat some of that stagnancy and, dare I say, cluelessness that they experience versus these better teams in the playoffs and have more of a true point guard on the floor. But here's something important to consider as well, because even I was surprised by this stat. My basketball brain tells me that LaMelo Ball is going to push the pace and push the Timberwolves from a top 10 team in pace to a top 5 team in pace. Yet, funny enough, the Hornets were actually 26th in pace and 26th in fast break points with LaMelo Ball. But of course, it doesn't help that they were also 29th in steals and 28th in opponent turnovers. That had a lot to do with that. You can't run if you're not generating turnovers. Now, Minnesota, on the other hand, was 12th in steals, and they were 10th in opponent turnovers. So obviously, they're going to have more opportunities for fast break points. That's exactly the kind of dynamic that suits LaMelo Ball's game. So we should see an even faster Timberwolves team next season, which is exciting. And then lastly, let's not forget, at the end of the day, LaMelo Ball can score the rock too. When LaMelo gets hot, it gets scary. Those one-legged fadeaways from the corner will absolutely destroy an opposing team's spirit. They may have lost a 20-point per game scorer in Julius Randle, but they are getting one right back in LaMelo Ball. I do have my fears that, with some of the unhinged hoops going to come into play, because a majority of LaMelo's points do come from threes, and a lot of those off-dribble, bold threes that he takes. And now LaMelo is joining a team that has made 2 conference finals in 3 years. So to me, one of the hardest things they're going to be doing this year is finding a middle ground in empowering LaMelo to be himself while reminding him that not every swing has to be a home run hit. I don't know how much of a shelf life this partnership, especially this duo between Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball, has. I'm sure we will see some exciting hoops. There's no doubt about that. They will have their moments where they look like a really strong backcourt. There's no doubt about that. But at least right now, I'm just not confident that this was a trade that got the Timberwolves exponentially better or exponentially worse. But they did get their point guard, and those other positions might be easier to fill, right? They have a point guard in LaMelo Ball. They got a great franchise guy in Anthony Edwards. Jaden McDaniels is great at the 3 spot. Rudy Gobert is still a strong rim protector. So maybe the other positions will be easier to fill more than I think. And maybe it's just going to be one of those trades that might look a little bit better 2 to 3 years from now, as opposed to an immediate success kind of thing. But, we'll see, because I was wrong about the Timberwolves going into this season. So we'll see how it goes for the future. And because I know the Timberwolves hope that that's the case, that this looks better in the next few years than a short-lived experiment. But of course, that brings us to an even bigger trade. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis going to the Miami Heat for Tyler Herro, Kel Ware, Jaime Jaquez, and Kasparis Giannakis, along with several future draft picks. So a pretty hefty haul indeed for Giannis, as expected. Now, I want to start with the Bucks side of this trade, of course, because this is an interesting return for the Milwaukee Bucks, who are now sort of starting from scratch in a way, right? They have a lot of talent on that roster, a lot of players with something to prove, but no true superstar, or some would even say star for that matter. They're bringing in a hometown guy and an all-star caliber player in Tyler Herro. They're bringing in a 6-man finalist in Jaime Jaquez. Kevin Porter Jr. just opted into his player option, so he's coming back after an impressive 40-ish games due to missing large chunks of the beginning and the end of the season. But when he did play, he showed a lot of promise. Ryan Rollins is still coming into his own as a young point guard in the league, one of the better, most improved players in the league. And Kyle Kuzma is still on this team as of today. So just a gang of solid pieces that kind of resemble the sort of mix we saw from teams like the Atlanta Hawks, the Utah Jazz, or the Portland Trailblazers. All these are sleeper teams that were just 1 or 2 star players away from seriously making noise. And we see how that turned out, right? The Atlanta Hawks were able to be a top 5 team in the East. The Blazers, they got out of the play-in and made the playoffs without Damian Lillard, because they were fueled by the emergence of Deni Avdija. And then the Utah Jazz could very well mirror that success this upcoming season after getting Jaren Jackson Jr. and drafting Darren Peterson. So the Bucks might not look like that right now, but if they can develop a strong rotation of 9 to 10 guys with no egos and are fully bought in and just fill multiple skill sets, they might be able to bounce back from losing Giannis a bit quicker than expected. Similar to what we saw from the Blazers after trading Damian Lillard to the Bucks a couple seasons ago. And specifically, I know Tyler Herro dreamed of helping the Heat get back on top. I know Jaime Jaquez had his most productive season of his young career so far. And Kel Ware, he experienced some friction with Coach Spo a lot of times. So all of these guys are going to be playing with an extra chip on their shoulder, or even a little bit more freedom and less pressure than what Heat culture might present, which usually bodes well for an athlete in professional sports. So while the mix may be a bit crowded in some areas, I'm not too upset with what the Bucks have post-trade. They definitely got a lot of youth that they can develop, and even more trades that they might be able to explore with Miles Turner and Kyle Kuzma, but we'll see. Now, to the Heat side of things, because boy, is this something. The best thing about this trade for the Miami Heat is definitely the defense. I know it's a video game, But I've been playing with this team already in NBA 2K. And man, man, oh man. Davion Mitchell as a point of attack defender, guarding 94 feet, is just outstanding. Andrew Wiggins still on the wing as a solid perimeter defender for those bigger wing scorers. And if you manage to avoid those guys, you're either waiting on Bam or Giannis inside. The way the Miami Heat will be able to switch everything and turn defense into transition opportunities is going to be really fun to watch. Like, I love those teams that kind of get to their defensive roots and let that be their identity. Like, I see the Miami Heat being that kind of team, at least right now. Who knows what other moves they can make and who else they might acquire. But as of today, that defense looks strong. I'm excited for that because I love defense. This is the Mid-Post podcast, but I love some defense as well. Now, obviously, a front court dynamic of Giannis on the floor with Bam Adebayo or Bobby Portis, or Bam and Bobby even, gives the Heat a versatile defender and stretch big on the floor for all 48 minutes. And we knew that any trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo required that he was going to be able to play with a floor spacing big man, and the Heat checked that box by not just pairing him with Bam Adebayo, but bringing along Bobby Portis for greater depth. And that even makes me remember, if you recall the debut episode of this podcast where I talked about Giannis trades and things of that nature, I gave a specific checklist for teams in the Giannis sweepstakes called the Giannis Essentials. A stretch five, which would be a bonus if they could protect the rim. That sounds a lot like Bam Adebayo. A half-court score, a bonus if they can play defense. You can make the case that that's Andrew Wiggins. Contrary to popular belief, he did have some really good games for the Miami Heat this past season and filled that role tremendously. They have a point of attack defender in Davion Mitchell, and then BNB. Bring my brothers. The Heat nailed 3 out of the 4. And really the 3 most important ones. They can work on bringing Thanasis and Costas later, even though, according to Ramona Shelburne, they don't have any plans of doing that. But again, just wait till Giannis steps foot into the Miami organization and said, yeah, you're going to bring my brothers eventually. Because at the end of the day, I'm Giannis. Now, all that said, the offense still has some catching up to do. They lose a lot of the on-ball creation, whether that was from 3 levels with Tyler Herro or mid-range in from Jaime Jaquez. That's going to hurt their depth and their playmaking depth specifically that the Miami Heat just had. Even more so, the Heat's isolation-centric style of play last season really unlocked a new level of pace and sometimes dominant success that fit with their personnel. But now I wonder if that offense, is that going to force Giannis to attack from beyond the three-point line more than he should, forcing teams to zone him and maybe even clog his driving lanes and stifle the Heat's offensive fluidity. It's been difficult for me to try to imagine what that looks like with Bam and Giannis being similar as far as mobile bigs with wing-like skills. Is it going to get a little too crowded? Are they going to have to change the offense again? Right? But at the end of the day, I do trust Eric Spoelstra and the rest of his coaching staff to figure that out, because at the end of the day, the Miami Heat's offense, it was isolation-centric, but there was still a lot of off-ball movement and players just filling in each other's gaps. And that's why they were able to be one of the top scoring teams in the league and literally the highest paced team in the league. They were scoring teams out of the gym. But again, that's going to look different with a makeup like this, and especially knowing they lost some of that offensive depth. So we'll see how that goes, because there's some pros with that, and there are also some cons that I'm a little more concerned about. Now, moreover, bench scoring is probably going to be a problem too. A second unit primarily thriving off Pelle Larsson, Simone Fontecchio, and Bobby Portis needs a spark plug or even 2 to really move the needle for me. Now, maybe they alleviate that by bringing in Norman Powell off the bench and maybe let Pelle Larsson start at the 2. Or maybe, as many have alluded to already, the Miami Heat just find a way to do the Miami Heat thing and get a rise out of someone closer to the end of the bench. And we soon see that really any lineup with Giannis has a chance to be successful because of Heat culture. Now, for some reason, I'm envisioning this team going 48-34. That would put them around 3rd in the East if we're going off this year's standings. I do see them closer to 50 wins. They just had 43 wins this season, I believe it was. So I do see them just off the strength of Giannis getting closer to that 50 mark. but I do see them missing the mark due to some shortcomings offensively if the roster stays as it is. But maybe Miami proves me wrong once again and proves everybody wrong once again, as I already didn't have faith that they could snag a star like Giannis this summer. So maybe they'll do it again. But either way, I believe Giannis got what he wanted, and so did the Heat. Now they just have to build from here. It isn't even July yet, and there's just so much to break down when it comes to these trades. How will LaMelo and Ant-Man fit? Does Minnesota become less of a threat, or are they about the same? Are the Heat done making moves, or does Pat Riley and company have more tricks up their sleeves? One man can't do it all. I know you got some theories too. Make sure to let me know your thoughts as we process these big moves together. It's been a tough journey, but we made it to our spot, so now we got to make it count. Make or miss? First up, make or miss. Austin Reaves locks in his max deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I'm going to see this as a make because I'm not the type of person, number one, to tell another person what they are worth financially. That's not my place. And I will say, we've seen the type of player that Austin Reaves is. Most notably, when Luka and LeBron aren't on the floor, he is a really good Robin to a Batman. We've seen Austin Reaves countless times put on that Superman cape and get a 30-point triple-double or 20-something points, 10 assists, and hit a game winner. Like, that dude, he's nice. He's nice. You can see why he got a deal like this. Now, I will say the timing of it is interesting because I could see why it does look a little bad because he had a rougher playoff run this year coming back from the injury and everything. And he's someone that can get to the free throw line really well. He has a crafty handle. He can knock down threes, but he isn't necessarily a prototypical complete player, which I think limits his potential at times. So again, usually guys like this, they get this money and they get these opportunities, but then over time you start to see they're not exactly a top tier option. And then people start saying, oh, well, he's not worth the money. So I feel like that is going to happen to Austin Reaves, unfortunately, unless he just shows that, hey, I am a 27 point per game scorer in this league. We'll just have to see. But at the end of the day, he is somebody you want to keep around Luka Doncic in a post-LeBron era. Luka needs someone else next to him that can get their 20 to 25 points a game. And Austin Reaves, at least for right now, can be that guy. Worst case, the Lakers do what they do and they trade him if the value is still good. But for now, I'm not surprised that they gave him the max. Considering his journey to the league and what he's been through, this is dope for him. I'm happy he got his bag, man. But of course, he's going to now have to really improve now that he's got that bag. He's got to improve how he and Luka can really make something special for this next era of Lakers basketball. But for right now, I'm going to give that a W. I think that's a make for Austin Reaves, and I think, at least for right now, it's a make for the Lakers, just as long as they really recognize the other kind of pieces that they need to put around Luka Doncic. Because they locked in their score, but those other positions are just as important as Austin Reaves. Next, make or miss, Isaiah Stewart traded to the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, this is a make. As far as brand identity, this was the next best fit for Isaiah Stewart, a.k.a. Beef Stew. This dude came from the Bad Boys Reborn to the Grit and Grind 2.0 Grizzlies. He's absolutely going to mesh with the city of Memphis and be impactful for a franchise that embraces hard work. It's unfortunate that it didn't work out in Detroit, man, because Isaiah Stewart was a beloved player for them, but it helps both sides as the Pistons, they free up some money, and then the Grizzlies, they gain a rim protector that they lost in Jaren Jackson Jr. So I love it for both sides, and with more scoring options in Memphis, off the dribble and things of that nature, he can be let off the hook a little bit more offensively. He became less valuable in the playoffs as Paul Reed brought more impact to the game offensively, which is always going to stand out for a team like the Pistons, who had more of a 2000s, even early 2010s kind of roster where there weren't a lot of scoring options, and they thrived off their defense the most. So that didn't surprise me. And again, respect to the Detroit organization for doing right by Isaiah and trading him to a team that is sure to embrace his personality and give him another home where the fans are going to love him. So I love that deal. That is an absolute make. Another make that I got is actually Aaron Wiggins going to the Hawks and Isaiah Joe to the Pistons. So OKC wasted no time unloading some key role players that saw a decrease in their minutes during the playoffs. You look at a guy like Aaron Wiggins, who is able to fit with a Hawks team with very similar depth and selflessness to OKC. I think he'll have a very similar role. I don't really see him getting more opportunity or less. I think it's really going to be the same, but just a different environment. And then you look at Isaiah Joe going to Detroit. Absolutely huge, because the more shooting they can put around Cade Cunningham, the better. He'll still be fighting for some consistent minutes because, again, they do have some decent depth there, but he'll be able to show his value as an elite shooter for a team that could always benefit from that, and that alone might push him out against guys like Ron Holland and Javonte Green, just because of his shooting ability. I think his chances of winning those minutes is more than Aaron Wiggins in Atlanta, but at the same time, I think these are good fits for both players. Again, OKC did right by a couple guys that helped them win a championship just the season prior. So, I enjoyed this for both of those guys. I don't have too much to say about it. It's a make for me. But then we got a miss, because next up, Miles Bridges traded to the Phoenix Suns for Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. I had to give this one a miss. I was thinking about a make, but I ultimately came to the conclusion of a miss. Now, my first thought on this trade was the Hornets got the exact kind of glue pieces that I wanted them to have when they had LaMelo Ball. If this trade happened while LaMelo Ball was still on the team, I would probably like it way more. But given what I shared earlier in the show, the Hornets are once again another team that seems to be trying to follow that Atlanta Hawks formula. They are hoping that they get a breakout season from Brandon Miller and or Con Knipple, and then just hope that the surrounding role guys can be impactful enough to keep them afloat in the East. Now, clearly the Hornets are going in a new direction, but I'm still just trying to wrap my head around why they're doing this now, when it looked like they were ready to take a leap. But from what I understand, again, I'll say, it just seems like the Hornets are pivoting in a very John 13:7 way. You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Now, as for the Suns, they seem to be mirroring that top-heavy lineup that we've seen from teams in recent years like the Knicks, the Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, where you got four starters who are or were once capable of getting a team 20 points per game. But I just don't like that they had to give up two of their best role players in Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, who were not just really consistent spot-up shooters, but also solid defenders, solid connective pieces. But I'll tell you what, if this means more minutes for a guy like Rasheed Fleming or Kaman Maluach, or, of course, an opportunity for their new draftee, Koa Pete, to get rotational minutes, I can feel a little bit better about this trade, as it could give these young guys opportunities to build on the flashes that they've already shown or why they were drafted, respectively. But the thing is, there's still a little bit of an issue, because bringing in Miles Bridges is only going to give Devin Booker another reason to defer to his teammates and shift his focus from scoring to establishing the offense. Unless Jordan Ott plans to stagger Devin Booker alongside Colin Gillespie to help out that second unit and let Book focus more on scoring throughout the game. Additionally, the fact that Miles Bridges is a 33% three-point shooter compared to the 40% shooters that both Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal were during all their years as Suns collectively is definitely a downgrade. But I will say, having Miles Bridges in the dunker spot and somebody who should find open spots to cut backdoor is a really nice option to add alongside the kind of scorers and playmakers, or, well, not by passing, but at least, creating off the dribble, that Devin Booker, Jalen Green, and Dillon Brooks are. And of course, he'll hopefully be able to help a team in the Suns that was already top 5 in points off turnovers, but they were 20th in fast break points. So, as I said before, the fact that he thrives in the paint should definitely help the Suns, because they were 29th in the league in points in the paint. They needed somebody to put pressure inside because their best scorers were all primarily jump shooters. Now, I still would have liked, I still would have preferenced they get a point guard like Ja Morant to fill that specific void. So that way his drives could create catch and shoot opportunities for Booker, Green, and Brooks and get the defense to collapse more, rather than now have this scenario where Devin Booker's still going to be dealing with blitzes, and he's still going to be having to take these tougher shots off the dribble because Miles Bridges will be more off ball. So I do think there were better fits for Bridges, like the Bulls or the Pelicans, younger teams more similar in nature to the Hornets. But the Suns, they do get a more younger, athletic, and offensive-minded player to fill their starting power forward slot. It's still not the best trade to me, as there are various pros and cons, but I have to qualify this as a miss because it just wasn't the trade I felt the Suns needed to make. I would have much rather them go after Ja Morant specifically, even if it meant sacrificing Jalen Green, but maintaining Grayson Allen and or Royce O'Neal for shooting. But allegedly, the Phoenix Suns aren't done yet, so we shall see how they replace the shooting that they lost. All right, next make or miss. The Pistons are allegedly exploring sign and trade options with Jalen Duren. And I got to tell you straight up, this is a miss. It is very unfortunate that this is due to his playoff numbers dropping to 10 points and 8 rebounds per game after a 19.10 rebound all-star season. This is just the latest example that the league moves fast and the playoffs are a whole different ball game compared to the regular season. And with crazy contenders in this league and the amount of parity that is in the league, teams are going to move even faster these days. I still think the Pistons need to focus on how they use him just as much as him improving his individual game, adding a reliable post game that's consistent, increasing his overall aggression offensively. He always looked better when he was aggressive. And when he takes his foot off the gas, it shows itself. And I think not only is it hard, though, on Cade Cunningham when there isn't a lot of shooting on the floor, but it gets hard on Jalen Duren, too, because less floor spacing means it becomes easier to put bodies on him, sag off those shooters, and just double team him and put him in vulnerable positions for turnovers or missed rebound opportunities, right? Things you don't want with him. I still believe he is very much worth keeping. The Pistons just have to empower him to be his best. It just doesn't look right to give up on him at just 22 years old, 4 seasons in, where he's been pretty healthy and has one of the best pick and roll dynamics with Cade Cunningham. Not everything has to be blown up or traded. Jalen Duren just it's old school hoops. Jalen Duren, watch the film, get your butt in the gym, attack those weaknesses, and show up better. And so does the Pistons organization. How can we get the most out of him? We lost? Okay, cool. How can we get back to the drawing board? Don't fall for the grass is greener trap. All right, keep Jalen Duren. Make sure he grooms himself and his game. And keep going. You got a good big man with a really good point guard. Keep that dynamic and fill in those other holes. Don't trip about this when you know you need a shot creator more than you can think about this right now. That's what I would tell the Pistons. So that's a miss for me. And then last two right here. Make or miss. LeBron and Anthony Davis to the Golden State Warriors, potentially. I got to say that's a miss. And I know I'm going to sound like an old head, but what else is new? If you watch my former show and if you watch this show, it is no surprise. I like the idea of this as a last resort effort to give the Warriors a storybook Disney ending, but I am not a fan of this from a competitive standpoint. Super teams can be fun, but seeing great players compete is even better for me, especially given the battles that LeBron and Steph/Draymond have had over the years. It would be such a Wilt Chamberlain move for LeBron once again, because like Wilt was great in LA, you're going to think of his Sixers and his Warriors days more. Same thing with LeBron. I knew it when he went to the Lakers. LeBron has played very well with the Lakers. He's had some great moments. He brought him a championship in 2020. But you still think of his first stint in Cleveland. You still think about Miami. And you still think about that 2016 championship. Leave it at that. Don't go to the Warriors and just, what are we doing? I just don't like the idea of this move. But as I've said a lot today, it would be good for the Warriors establishing a top-heavy lineup, but these guys are older. They're not as healthy as they used to be. I just don't want the moment to be watered down because they made an impulsive decision. Anytime I think about it, I'm just like, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's fun. I think it's cool, but it's just not. It's not what it would be if it was 5-10 years ago. Like, I'm still processing it since the news came out on Monday, but I just don't have a good feeling about it. I just don't have a good feeling about it. I don't like it. I don't like it. That's a miss for me. But then the other one, Kawhi Leonard potentially in talks of returning to the Toronto Raptors as the Clippers and Raptors work out a potential trade here. And as for Kawhi doing this, I actually love this. This is a make for me because he low-key should have stayed with the Raptors after the 2019 championship. He probably would have rattled off another one or maybe even two more with that team. But at the same time, I totally understood him wanting to be home in Los Angeles and give the Clippers franchise something special, something that they can cherish, right? Some of their own history. Uh, what they've established right now for the Raptors, what they've established with Scotty Barnes and Coach Rajakovic as a defensive-minded group with solid depth, a player of Kawhi's caliber would certainly keep them towards the top half of the Eastern Conference. I don't like the idea of potentially losing Colin Murray Boyles. Ooh, that would just be such a tough hit to take. It's such a sacrifice in getting Kawhi Leonard because he's already such an important and versatile glue guy. But it is certainly hard to pass up Kawhi Leonard and Scotty Barnes as a duo, especially after the career season Kawhi just had. And Scotty Barnes had a really good season this year. Why not finish? Why not let Kawhi finish his career with the franchise he made history with? I love that for him. I love that for the Raptors and their fans as they continue to try to establish themselves as an Eastern Conference sleeper, technically. So that's what I got for the fadeaway. I return with 4 makes and 3 misses this week. Not bad. 4 for 7 is very good, but it's even better to stay in rhythm with the fades, especially in the offseason. But with that, that is all I have for today's loaded show. If you like this episode, please don't be shy and let me know. As always, honest reviews and ratings are greatly appreciated as I seek to help keep the mid-post alive and bring a positive impact to the game we love and the way that it's covered, one show at a time. Be sure to follow the socials at MidPostPod on Twitter and Instagram. Desmond Powell _ on Twitter / Instagram and TikTok, so you stay connected in a variety of ways. But in the meantime, I'll catch you in the post next time. Peace out and God bless. So live reaction, not even 10 minutes after I just sat here and hit end record and was about to take my setup down, I come back because I get the notification from my brother, and he tells me Ja Morant has been traded to the Portland Trailblazers. So I might as well just stay on here and talk about that because that's just incredible to think about. Now, the first thought is this is an absolute power move, right? Similar to what the Lakers did getting Luka alongside LeBron is what the Blazers are trying to do by putting Ja Morant next to Damian Lillard. Okay, the fact is Damian Lillard is getting older, so if this pairing with Ja Morant goes well, they have already locked in their point guard for the future, and they can just transition seamlessly between the dynamic of their team. Like, it'll be like nothing when Damian Lillard eventually retires. And the other thing that stands out to me is that Damian Lillard is used to playing with another guard similar in size in CJ McCollum, right? The thing is, Ja Morant is more of a point guard. He is more of somebody who's going to slash and get his teammates involved. CJ McCollum was more of a shooting guard, somebody who's going to look for his shots a little bit more than look for his teammates. So this is an interesting dynamic because, again, I think the thing with the Blazers now that they've established this roster while getting Damian Lillard back is that Damian Lillard now has opportunities to play off ball, and that's something he's always wanted. He wanted open looks from 3, and now he's going to get a lot of those catch and shoot threes and not have to settle for so many off the dribble threes because they have Ja Morant now. They have Scoot Henderson still in this trade. They traded away Chris Murray and Jeremy Grant, so they still got Scoot. They still got Drew Holiday. They still got Shaedon Sharpe. They still got Denny Avdia. Like, there are so many options with the guard play that the Portland Trailblazers are going to be able to use and benefit from because of this trade. And I like this for the Grizzlies side as well. Like, the Grizzlies have a lot of good forwards. If you're really paying attention, the Grizzlies have a solid roster themselves. You look at Ty Jerome, Jalen Wells, Cedric Coward, Gigi Jackson, Cam Boozer, now Jeremy Grant, Zach Edey. I mean, it's just so many pieces on that team that are going to be able to thrive with this opportunity, a young team on the come up still with some quality players. And I know right now off the top, I'm forgetting some people. I know they just locked in Kentavious Caldwell Pope. So the Grizzlies got a decent team too. Not going to be a playoff team, but a team with where there's going to be opportunity to build something. And yeah, this is just insane. This is insane. I mean, I think again, we got to think about this less about the Blazers having a stacked guard rotation than them preparing for life without Damian Lillard. I think that's really what this is. It's an unexpected fit. There were much better fits for Ja Morant. Like I just said in this previously in this episode, I really wanted the Phoenix Suns to go get him. But I'm not too mad at this Portland Trailblazers trade as it grows on me the more that I think about it. I think the dynamic between Dame, Chris Haynes had tweeted that they plan on starting both of them. And Damian Lillard is a natural scorer. So I think he'll have no problems giving the floor general duties to Ja Morant and focusing more on his buckets and playing off ball and playing off Denny Avdia and everything. I will say also the thing about getting Ja Morant, the Blazers still need shooting. Like if they're going to make a trade like this, it's great for their depth, but man, they're going to need even more shooting now. Like I don't know how I feel about that. There are probably still moves that they're looking at. Like I said, that guard room is crowded. So I don't know if they plan on keeping Drew Holiday, and we'll see what they do with other guys. But wow, how about that for some breaking news and a live mid-post reaction, at least somewhat live, right? Considering I just hit end on that episode. So yeah, I didn't want to make this too long. Ja Morant is officially a Portland Trailblazer, traded for Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. And the NBA continues to be bananas. This is what happens all the time. You just never saw it on camera. Every time I stop recording, especially in the offseason, the NBA loves to throw another bomb at us in the offseason. So wow, Ja Morant to the Blazers. Overall, good trade. Like I said, power move. It's a power move. The Blazers got a lot of ball handlers that they can trust, and that's kind of the NBA that we're in now. A lot of teams are making these power moves, trying to make top-heavy lineups. They don't really care about being crowded. They just like having more options. And what better options you have for starting caliber point guards, regardless of health, than Ja Morant and Damian Lillard, and still got Scoot Henderson and Denny Avdi and all these guys. So it'll be interesting to see how the Blazers deal with that. But I think they can make it work. I really think they can make it work. And I don't think it's going to be as bad as what people might think it'll look like, but like I said, they gotta get some shooting though. This is only gonna work long term if they get some shooting, and right now they don't have that. So that's got to be the immediate next step. So yes, now hopefully for good this time. Those are my quick thoughts. I'll see you when I see you. The NBA, where amazing happens. This is the Mid Post.